Good morning.
Good morning.
So this month we're talking about Taoism, this beautiful, wonderful, it feels odd to call it a religion. It's sort of a way of being. It's so flowing and gentle. To get a sense of the different feeling tone of how Taoists tend to perceive the world, Taoism, Zen Buddhism came through Taoism. So Buddhism came to China, and it got transformed through Taoism, and that's how Zen Buddhism came along. So there was this moment when the British first climbed to the top of Mount Everest, and the British claimed, "We have conquered Mount Everest." And the Buddhist theologian, D.T. Suzuki, not the same as Shunryu Suzuki, he said, now Japanese people would say that differently. We wouldn't say we've conquered Mount Everest. We would have said we befriended Mount Everest. And I thought, what a beautiful, they're in alignment, they're in the flow with the nature around them. And in fact, when the Japanese expedition then scaled the second highest mountain, whose name I cannot remember right now, they were just a mere 50 feet from the top, and they stopped, and they turned and went down. It was, in essence, bowing to the mountain out of respect. They didn't go all the way to the top. And the Western mountaineer said that was total class. It's just a different way of being with the world around us, that it's not something to dominate. It's not something to overcome. It's not something to push through with all our might. We have a lot of that energy, don't we, in our Western society, of to make things happen. I'm going to strive. And there's just allowing, moving with the flow, finding that rhythm. Last week I asked the question, what is the way for you? What is that rhythm for your life? And listening to it and flowing along with it. We make this wonderful, the Tao makes this one, I've become Taoist, I'm now we. Use the term river, waters a lot because it's flowing, it moves and it ebbs and it has incredible power to change its environment, but it's slow and it's gradual and it's gentle. And it doesn't, they talk about, well, don't push upstream. You're not trying to go against the flow, you want to go with the flow. So that's an essence of what the way is, the Tao is the way, and its power, the power of moving with the flow. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about, or a lot about it, or somewhat, the yin-yang symbol. And it's funny because in my head, we're still over in Rosewood Commons, so as I was thinking about this talk, I had the PowerPoint behind me with that huge yin-yang symbol and saw myself pointing to it, and I literally forgot until I was sitting right here. I'm like, oh, there's no PowerPoint. So I think most of you know the yin-yang symbol, the circle and the dividing, and usually the way it's depicted is one side's black and one side's white, and then the white dot is in the middle of the black, and the black dot's in the middle of the white. And what that is depicting is this world of duality. And the way the Taoists look at it is not as a war between right and wrong, good and evil. It's a dance. It's this wonderful flowing back and forth. And I just have to use the language that Houston Smith used because I just loved it. I just thought it was so beautiful. He said, each takes up abode in the deepest recess of the partner's domain. And I had to go back and look at the picture. Where the dot is of the opposite, it's at the deepest domain of the other symbol. So in the deepest part of our light is a darkness, and the deepest part of our darkness is our light. The interesting thing about using water and being in the flow is I think generally we associate that with the light. When things are going well, everything is in the flow. We're in the grace. Everything is moving and glowing. And someone said it's so easy to be in a state of love when you're in the flow. Just everything seems to be saying yes to you. I've talked about it's fun when you're driving and you get all green lights. The world's saying yes to me. But it could happen in conversations. Things just work out. You don't even need to try. They just are happening. But we also have to remember that there's an ebb. There's an ebb and a flow. And when we're in the ebb, which is more the dark side of the symbol, that's when we need trust. Because we're not feeling necessarily the flow. Things aren't always working out. It seems like we keep hitting walls wherever we go, or things seem difficult and challenging. And we if we soften and say that's part of life too, that's an inherent part of life, which is the Taoists do. They don't say something's wrong, I'm not in the flowing part. This is part of life too, being in that dark womb energy, allowing something is going to shift. When we expand, what do we know about the universe? When it expands, it contracts. Expansion, contraction, we move one step forward, 2 steps backward. There's always this back and forth. And when we're in those backward places or constriction places or darker places, that's when we don't feel the presence. So we really have to develop that sense of trust. One of the reasons why we cultivate our spiritual practices and the beauty and the love and joy of grace and spirit is so when we're in those dark places and we can't feel it anymore, we call on it, we trust it. I can't feel it, but I know that it's there. I know that it exists, and that helps us move through those dark times. And the other thing that helps us move through those dark times is to not judge them and say, it shouldn't be this way. I remember you hear all those phrases like, don't should on yourself. You've heard those? I used to hear them all the time before I ever started really getting how powerful they are. By listening to other people, sometimes we don't hear ourselves say it, but we hear it through other people. And I hear other people say it all the time, I should have done this, or I should do this, or I should be there, or we should have done this, we should be this way. And as I hear it now, it's like, it's okay just that we're in this wonderfully imperfect world. And we are constantly doing things that we don't like. And there's no should. It's part of life, and that's what makes Taoism so gentle, because it accepts everything. It doesn't have this should. It says no. I mean, it's right there in the symbol. No, right there in all of it is who we are. I was thinking of just because it came up a little bit recently in a more gentle way, but when I was a kid, I really identified with the gentle part of myself. I'm a soft, gentle person. I had very loud, aggressive brothers, and my parents were very opinionated, strong. So I grew up with, so I was the soft one. And I highly identified with it. And I'll never forget. So there was this young girl, this was one of our little girls, and she was really wanted to fight me, and I'm not quite sure why, but she was really like egging for a fight. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to fight you. That's not who I am. Hello. So I remember moving around the neighborhood, like trying to avoid her because she kept trying to pick a fight with me. I'm like, I'm not going to fight you. But then finally I just had enough. And I remember, all right, we'll fight. And I threw her to the ground and I sat on top of her. And I just like, are we done now? And I will never forget, my mom came out and broke it up. And that night at dinner, I was mortified, but inside I'm like, yes! But I'm like, I can't believe everybody saw that part of my personality. Yes! And I'm like, oh, I do have that aggressive side of me. I do have that, and I think we do that with our personality, whatever it is. My one brother said the opposite. He said, I never knew I had soft emotions until I was in high school. I just didn't know they existed. To me, he was out conquering the world all the time. He was completely at home with that and not at home with the softer part of him. We all have these places that we say, oh, I'm more this. If you're an extrovert, you have introverted side to you. Every one of you knows that. And if you're an introvert, you have an extroverted part of you. It's Carl Jung who said, if you're all one thing, we're very out of balance. We need to have both. And that's what happens, I think, with our world, is we get so out of balance because we really highlight one aspect of the world, and we forget that the world is all of it, and we forget to accept all of it. And that's where a lot of the pain comes. That's where a lot of the sharp edges of life come, because we feel like it's supposed to be something other than it is. I haven't read the book yet, but somehow this week I was like, I've got to get the book because I love the title. And it's Reverend David Alt wrote a book, The Grass is Greener Right Here. I love that because there's always something better. We're always striving. So every time we do that, we feel like we're in a not enough place and it's got to be something other than what it is. That is not a soft and gentle way to live our life. That is not an accepting and allowing and loving place to live our life. If we're feeling sad, it's okay to feel sad. If we're feeling joyful and energized, it's okay to be that. It's this constant, what Houston Smith talks about is that circle embraces all of it, and the more we know that we belong to this circle, no matter what's going on, everything is okay. Everything is okay, and we accept it as it is. This past week, we had two major public figures take their lives. I shouldn't say major, but I should take that back. There are two public figures who took their lives. Some of you may or may not know them. Kate Spade was a decorator, designer, and very successful. And she took her life, I believe it was Tuesday. And then Anthony Bourdain took his life on Friday. These are people who succeeded, who did well, who strived and achieved what so many people would love to achieve in their life. And yet there was clearly this other side that most of us were not privy to, that was enough of a reason for them to say, and I don't know either one of them, I don't know what their story is, so I don't want to presume to know it, but my sense is that it was painful enough that they wanted to stop. Because most suicide, that's what it's about. It's about, there's so much pain, I just want it to stop. And often what people put in their minds is, other people will be better off because I'm such a drag on them. So they'll be better when I take my life. They'll feel freer. That never happens, by the way. No one ever feels better after someone takes their life. No one's ever relieved. But that's when you're in that frame of mind. And I was thinking about this whole idea. There's been a lot of posts about mental health and how it's stigmatized. And I remember when I worked in a psychiatric hospital, I loved it. I loved the people there. And I loved the rawness of it. People, just like when you're in a hospital with cancer, there's just this generosity of spirit. We're all in this together. The same thing was happening when I worked at the psychiatric hospital. People were so kind and generous. There was no mask. There's no putting on of pretending to be something. People were just open and loving and supportive and caring. And I remember someone was on their phone with their employer, and I went to ask them something, and they said, "Shh, I don't want them to know I'm here." And I remember being struck, and I'm like, well, why wouldn't you want them to know you're here? And they're like, because I would be embarrassed for them to know that I was in a psychiatric hospital. And it was in that moment I had forgotten that there was a stigma to it because it became so much a part of my life. I didn't have that. And I started thinking about that. Well, why would people think going to a psychiatric hospital is a bad thing? No one thinks going to a regular hospital is a bad thing. And as I thought about it, it came to me that we think when something happens to our body, there's an element of, I don't have a choice. I mean, in our teaching, we might say you do have a choice, in which case we can turn and do blame people. But in general, we don't blame people when they get sick. We have compassion. I think when people go to a psychiatric hospital, there's a sense of blame. Like, this is your mind. You could have some control over this. So at some level, we think people have a choice in this. They have a choice in their brain more than they have a choice in their body. And we point fingers or we shame. And we could say, well, we don't do that, and yet why do so many people feel like we need to hide that? Most people who are going to a hospital don't hide. They take pictures. Look at what happened. I broke my leg. Everyone pray for me. People don't take pictures of themselves in the psychiatric hospital. I'm in full-on depression. Pray for me, please. Wouldn't that be great, though? Because then they would get thousands of prayers if they did that. But they're not going to do it. Not because they're so shut down that they aren't willing to get help, but because of the shame and the embarrassment that they have, the depression. Because I think still on some level we think people choose to feel this way. And what Taoism is saying, no, this is part of life. Darkness is part of life. It is something that everyone goes through. You are not an abnormal person for sometimes where the world gets so intense and your body chemistry is responding to that intensity, and you need to go and get help and support, whether it's pharmaceutical help, therapeutic help, connection with other people. That is a wonderful, beautiful gift to give yourself, and we should be praising and thanking God that we have all these wonderful facilities to help us during those dark times. I remember I was in Practitioner 2 training, and Reverend Michael Beckwith came in. He taught the last 5 weeks of class. And I can't remember what the topic was, but I remember him looking around and saying, one of you wasn't supposed to be here. You were supposed to have died. And I immediately thought, oh, that's me. He's talking about me. Because there was a time where I was really low. And it wasn't until later that I realized how many people in that class probably thought that he knew what he was saying. Because I think, and I'm not revealing, no one has said this to me, but just having been on this journey for so long, I'm fairly confident that there are many of you, several of you at least, who have thought, I'm done. The pain is just too much. I can't take it anymore. It's exhausting to be this way every day, day in and day out. And you wanted to end it. Because I keep meeting people and have met. It's a hard world. And we don't know how to get through it sometimes. We don't know how to walk through it. And we forget that we're not the only ones who have felt this way. We think we're the only ones who have gone through that depth of pain. I know there was a point where I got to that place in my own life, and because I felt like I'd already, like other people I had met, I had done therapy. And I asked him once, am I clinically depressed? And he said no, but I wasn't convinced, but he said no. And he said the greatest thing to me, because I said, sometimes I just think it'd be easier to end it all. And he goes, you won't. And that just pissed me off. I go, how do you know I won't? But for the rest of my life, and any time I go down, that's not even an option, because he told me I won't, and I just believed him. But it got to the point where I knew I wasn't going to do it, but I contemplated it. And there was that thing that felt like, I honestly, when you get to those deep places, you feel like it really isn't going to matter to most people, because you're so in such a dark place, you don't think that it's really going to impact. I'm like, it's not going to, my family, I literally wrote this. They'll cry for maybe a week or two, and then they'll be fine. Because you don't feel like your life has much meaning, or it doesn't matter to anyone else. You have no impact on anyone else. And in that moment when I was at that lowest point, it was then that shaped the rest of my life, because I knew the only reason why I was alive was because of this presence and this power that I call God. I knew it was in the room. It wasn't love. I wasn't overflowing and something cares about me. Didn't feel any of that. But it was in that moment. It was dark. It was a blackness, but I trusted it. And that's why I believe our spiritual life is so important, because there's got to be something that we trust more than anything else in the world. People come and go. We have our stuff, but I knew, I had spent time nurturing this life that even if nothing else mattered, even if I didn't matter to anything else, I knew I mattered to this divine presence. And again, it wasn't a feeling. It wasn't like I suddenly felt like I'm important or valuable. It was a black essence in the room, but it was good. And it wanted me to stay alive. And in that moment, I knew that the only reason why I was staying alive was for this presence called God. I don't think it's an accident. I have nothing to back this up. But it feels to me that in many ways that as we continue to grow more and more spiritually sophisticated, not even spiritually sophisticated, agnosticism and atheism and secularism is growing in numbers, and so is our suicide rates. Young people are becoming less connected with any sort of religious or spiritual organization or community, and suicide rates are going up. But then there's the opposite. Suicide rates are also going up in the rigid religious communities. I was watching the guy, I was going to remember his name for today, Dan Reynolds. He's the lead singer for Imagine Dragons, who Julian loves, and I listen to him through Julian. He's grown up Mormon, and he went to Brigham Young University, and he had sex with a woman, his girlfriend, who he had for 4 years, and they kicked him out of school because you're not supposed to have sex before marriage. And he said the amount of guilt that he lived with. And then he realized if he felt that guilt, what was it like to be gay in the Mormon church? And so he's stepping out more and more, advocating for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, I'm never quite sure, what's the Q for? Queer community within the Mormon community. He's really speaking out. He just came out with a documentary. It's beautiful. He said, I want to change Mormonism from within. But what he pointed to, it wasn't just Mormonism. Anytime something is that orthodox and that rigid, it breaks. People break because there's no room. There's no fluidity. There's no allowing. There's not this Taoist acceptance of everything. But there is, in Taoism, there still is something. And sometimes I think people go from that rigidity to there's nothing. I'm not going to be willing to be put down, so now there's nothing. And people are sort of just creating this superhuman world, but there's still no deep spiritual connection. We need that spiritual connection because I guarantee every one of us has that dark side in us, that place that's painful, that place that where we don't know what the next road is, where we don't know how to move from where we are. And it can last for quite some time sometimes. How do we move through that if we don't have that deep and profound connection to something greater than ourselves? Not because a religion gives it to us, but because through a teaching that a teacher or a book, anything is given to us, we start to experience it ourselves. So it carries us through those incredible moments that can also be incredibly rich, that we come out new, we come out reborn. That's the whole death and rebirth. If we cannot survive the death, if we just go completely unconscious, because that's the other thing, is that people get very attached sometimes. I find there's spiritual bypass where we try to pretend it's not there, or we go into it so much that becomes our identity. The darkness becomes our identity, and we are almost afraid of the light. What we're looking for is that wonderful harmony. We can have darkness, but in the midst of the darkness is the light, and no matter how light I get, there's still that darkness inside of me. And to live in that constant acceptance of what this life is. People just do what they do, and so they're speculating about what could have caused this pain for Anthony Bourdain. And some people got bad that people were speculating, but we're social animals. I think it's very upsetting, and so people start wondering. And one of the threads was, it was race consciousness, that this world has gotten to be so divisive, that it's gotten to be so edgy. It's you're right, I'm wrong, or I'm right, you're wrong. And that edge, there's no place. Taoism allows for all of it. That's why I love Zen too. The paradox, both can be true. And we have gotten so to a place where it's my truth or not at all. And I have found that even with spiritually progressive people, I've just found, so here's what, the aggressive part of me, it comes out sometimes, and but I can't help it sometimes. So someone was saying, it's a huge assumption. People stop doing this, trying to figure out why Anthony Bourdain is a huge assumption to say he was struggling. I'm like, I don't think that's a huge assumption. If someone's taken their life, there's probably some sort of struggle. So I said that, then becomes a little battle. And I'm like, here I am. I'm in a battle with someone about 2 words that just upset me. And I'm just like, but I found, and I'm like, what was it? Why did I get that? And I'm like, because I'm hearing so much, and I hear it more on social media, these declarative statements. This is the truth. This is the way it is. And if you just say concepts, and you don't have the flowing energy where there is no concepts behind it, those concepts hurt, even if they're good concepts. God is always good. You're always loved. You're always whole, perfect, and complete. If you are just using those words, you're just going to be abusing somebody who can't take that always in, because there's something even more wrong with me, because if God's always good, what is wrong with me that I can't experience it? What is wrong with me that I don't feel whole, perfect, and complete? What is wrong with me that, yes, I know that's true, but I cannot pull myself out of this depression? I can't pull myself. I must be seriously wrong. And that's just on the spiritually progressive world. But we're doing that, I think, more and more in general in the world. The political world, it's painful. It hurts. If you have a big, sensitive heart, addiction is up. Suicide rates are up, because if you have any type of sensitivity to what's going on, it doesn't even matter what the words are. You feel the energy behind it, which is slicing, it's dividing, it's separating, it's a battle, it's a war, it's not a dance. And what I love about Taoism is it's a dance. It's a gentle and gentle and kind way of being with all aspects of our being. And it seems to me now more than ever, we need this wonderful Taoist perception of life for ourselves, for our friends, for our neighbors, so that we can start opening ourselves in softness and gentleness to people who have different points of view, different perspectives. And the reason why I use mine is because, when I wrestled someone to the ground, that was like big and physical, but I can still get caught up in it, in the words, in the language. And that's when I told that person to, so I don't like her words of huge assumption. I just jumped into a debate I didn't need to jump into, but I still can get caught up in it. So I wanted to use that as an example. It doesn't always have to be a big philosophical debate, or just like really important stuff, but 2 words, and suddenly I'm in a debate, and it's either or. And we're going back and forth, and finally I just apologized. I said, I'm sorry, that just really wasn't that important. I'm sorry I went down that road. We can all do it. And then I thought, so I'm just going to tell you my process, because this is just an inkling of what we might experience. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just more aggressive than all of you. Because then what happened was, now I'm embarrassed that I did that. Why did I do that? Now I got into this, I still think I'm right, by the way, but but I don't want it. Well, why did I get into this public engagement of it, going back and forth? And, I wanted to hide. I felt shame. And then I realized how much I was judging myself. I shouldn't be this way. I shouldn't want to advocate for a position. I should want to be nothing but gentle and open. And yes, I have a different perspective with you, and it's all right, and it's all good. That's fine, and that's wonderful. But it's also okay that sometimes I want to argue. And I had to still accept that part of me. I realized, I still do it. I still shut myself down because I'm supposed to always be the soft, gentle, open, flowing person, accepting of all different perspectives. And the fact that sometimes I want to fight and argue, I don't like that part of me. And so I feel more shame. And that's what we do. When we find parts of ourselves that we don't like, it's not just that we don't like it. We start judging ourselves for that, and that makes it 10 times worse. Because then I was like, all my judgment of that I had this personality made everything worse and made me want to constrict more and hide more. And I'm like, I'm done. That's part of who I am. And then I just shifted. I'm like, you know what? I'm okay. I like to argue once in a while. And that's not going away. That was the key. And it's not going away. That's a part of my personality. It's part of my dark spot in my light. And it's going to be there. And if I keep beating myself over it, then I'm being violent with myself. And that's what I think often suicide comes to be, is violence with ourselves. We don't want to hurt other people, so we're willing to hurt ourselves. We're beating ourselves up so badly. And we assume everybody else is doing it because we're doing it to ourselves. We have to start learning to accept all of ourselves, and that we do get into these dark places, and it is okay. It is okay. It's part of this incredibly difficult life. Jack is reading a book, and I haven't read it, but I just skimmed it. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fudge, right? And he swears a lot during it, but he starts off with... No, not Jack, the author, yeah. Well, he's been swearing more, I don't know. I'm kidding. But the idea is, he starts off with, life is, this is hard. We struggle, and I thought that's so different than we thought, where we say life is surrender and everything is easy. Either way, we want to have this wonderful flow and balance, and that's what Taoism is about. It's both wonderful, easy and flowing, and it's hard and it's struggling, but if we can accept the hardness, and we accept when it's easy, and the easy isn't better than the hardness, it's just all part of this wonderful, beautiful circle in which we're all dancing and playing, we can breathe. It's all God. We can all breathe and just accept ourselves. Kindness, it's okay, whatever we're doing, and as we're doing this with ourselves, do it with each other. If there gets to a point, because this happens to me too, I'm not free of this, where someone is in their stuff and I'm like, they're in it again. Just stop it already, because it makes me uncomfortable. And I don't want to be in it with them, because I'm like, I want to be free. I had a friend who had so much darkness, and he moved into the light, and he was so resistant to being pulled back into the darkness. His light was almost warlike, like, no, that is... Get behind me. I'm not letting myself go there. I'm not, and I'm like, I feel your light, but there's a harshness to it. And we can do that with ourselves. I'm going to be positive, or with each other. And if we're doing it with each other, I guarantee you we're doing it to ourselves. So the invitation this week is to continue to be with the way for your life. Be with all aspects of your life. Be gentle. Be gentle. Be gentle. Whatever is arising, it's okay. It's okay. You're in the ebb. You're in the flow. It's okay. It really is okay. You're okay, just the way you are, whatever you're feeling. If you're in the darkness and you feel like you've been there for a long time and you should be out, you should be done with it by now. I hear that, we hear it all the time. I should be done with this by now. Stop. As long as we're in this human body, that darkness is going to keep coming up. It's going to be ebbing and flowing for the rest of our life in this human body, because in the human world, it's part of the world. or in the higher vibrations, no, it shifts. But in this vibration, it's going to keep coming. So stop saying it shouldn't be that way. No, I shouldn't say that. That was harsh, wasn't it? Stop saying it. I would prefer. It's kinder. It's more open. So be with that. Be with how you are with other people. Notice when you get into battles on social media. When people print things that irritate you, how are you with yourself? How are you with them? How much judgment are you in every day? Every day. Between now and just do this one day. Between now and when you go to sleep tonight, I want you to notice. You don't have to say anything out loud, just between you and yourself. Honesty is the key to this journey. If you're not honest, there's no point. And just honestly, how much are you judging your day? Who you are. Man, I was really good in that conversation. I feel puffed up. Oh, man, I sucked. I shouldn't have done that. Oh, they're good. Oh, they're bad. Just notice. Just notice. Food. The day should have been better. It was such a beautiful day. Why didn't I enjoy it better? I wasted my day. Just all these little judgments that we make that say it should be something other than what it is. So you really, I'm saying it all week, but I think we forget sometimes as the week goes on. So really I'm inviting you for today to really intensely be with, are you accepting completely with your heart wide open into infinity everything that's arising in your life? Every conversation is fine just as it is. Every action is fine just as it is. Everything that you're reading about, it doesn't mean we don't have goals or we want to improve things, but even in the midst of that, everything is okay. Okay? Everything is okay. We want to make the world a better place? Wonderful. And it's okay as it is. We need that wonderful paradox. But if we're only trying to make the world better and we don't know that it's okay as it is, then that's when it gets harsh. We need them to play. In Taoism, it says, you want to control your breath, and at the same time, you want it to be as soft and gentle as a child. It's always this wonderful paradox. If you're missing one part of that story, if you're striving without the acceptance, without the softness, that striving is going to be harsh, and you can get all your dreams come true, and you can still feel deep sadness and deep pain. Start today, okay? Let's pray. And welcome. And so we just begin with accepting everything as it is here and now. Everything in this moment is exactly as it should be. And notice, even in this moment, if we feel like the grass is greener somewhere else, that this moment should be anything other than what it is. Just notice. And that's okay. It's just noticing. And we can breathe in and just allow our hearts to soften, our bodies to soften, and make welcome this moment. Make welcome this moment just as it is. All of us in this room together here and now, and the children in their room with Michelle and teens with Ben. Many of our members in other places. Everything is just as it needs to be. It doesn't need to be anything other than what this moment is. And as we breathe into this awareness, we know that the infinite presence is always good. In the dark and in the light, it is always good. It is not sometimes good. It is not sometimes love. It is not sometimes peace. It is not sometimes joy. It is always joy. It is always peace. It is always love in the midst of the dark and the light, the right and the wrong, the strength and the weaknesses, or what we humanly call strengths and weaknesses. It is always already peace. It says yes. It embraces and unfolds all aspects of our being, all aspects of life, this wonderful, beautiful earth where there's so much struggle happening, so much back and forth and claiming this, that, and the other thing is opposite as this, that, and the other thing. And the Tao just accepts all of it. It just breathes in all of it. It doesn't fight. It doesn't struggle. It doesn't force. It allows and it accepts. It says, yes, you are loved. You are loved. You are loved. You believe this, you are loved. You believe this, you are loved. You believe this, you are loved. You think it should be this way, you are loved. You think it should be that way, you are loved. Always this wonderful, kind, gentle, infinitely embracing, we are loved. 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 All those miniature judgments we make throughout the day, that's okay, we are loved. About ourselves, that's okay, we are loved. We are always loved. We are never not loved. This love has no beginning and no ending. We are loved. We make judgments about other people. That's all right, they are loved. No matter what happens, they are loved. We are surrounded and folded and immersed in and washed over with love and more love and more love and more love and more love. And when we see and know this, we see with the eyes of God and we live with the eyes of pure joy and freedom that is not limited by any situation or circumstance or condition. It's never limited by any personality type. It is never limited by what we are experiencing moment to moment. This love is. This is the way, this is the truth, and this is the light, and this is who we are now and always. In deep abiding peace and everlasting joy, I release this word into the law of love, into the isness of love, into the being of love, into the truth of love, into the gentleness and kindness and tenderness of pure love. We release it, we let it be, and we say together as one. And so it is. Amen and amen.